have my friend Tyree, better known as Lex Lutheran on Twitter, on the podcast this week, and we had him on a Facebook live stream. Now, as some of you have seen, we're experimenting around with this live stream. I think it's a really great format to kind of do these things and get thoughts out there and kind of keep everybody sharp and on their toes at the same time. But there are technical issues with this. It's not as easy as you think to live stream a Skype conversation to either YouTube or Facebook or whatever else. It's just not an easy process. And in the middle of all that, stuff gets garbled, especially audio. And in this first part that I'm putting out today, the audio is not great, especially on my end. You can hear Lex very well. And that's the most important thing really at this point, because I think he had the most salient things to say in this entire conversation. But hopefully you can follow along, and I would just encourage you to muscle through the audio and listen to what's said, because these are very important topics, and we need to hear from different angles on this. You know, the thing that my side of the political aisle, my side of the theological aisle even, likes to express sometimes is that, hey, your lived experience doesn't mean anything to me. Well, and I think we need to make a clarifying comment about that. What should be meant by that is that, there's not one shared lived experience through a group of individuals, say Black Americans. There's not just one monolithic narrative going on there. And that's a lot of times what gets put forth, and that's what we reject. What we want to hear is the experiences of individuals shared with us, and we should take those into consideration on an individual case-by-case basis. And let's listen to what's being said, because they're going to give us insight into how to proceed and how to go forward and how to think about these things. And Lex does a great job doing this on this podcast, even though the audio we struggle with a little bit, not a little bit, a lot in many places. But again, I'd urge you to muscle through it, listen to it. This is going to be part 1, and I'll have part 2 up simultaneously with it, so you can listen to both of them at the same time, or listen just kind of as you want to. And hopefully, if you listen to it and listen carefully, I think it will be helpful to you. And by the way, just let me mention, we will have a truncated, an abridged version of the entire conversation out on the podcast sometime in the future. That's kind of how we're going with this. We're going to run them live, then we put them up on YouTube, and then we abridge them, and we're going to put them on the In Layman's Terms podcast. So we kind of get those 3 different levels or those platforms of exposure. So at any rate, here's this for now, and please muscle through it and enjoy it as best you can. Thanks for listening.
When we talk about people being locked up, it's almost as if, anybody who looks at the statistics can see that there's a bias in there. Like there's a study in Florida that shows that 2 people, a white person and a Black person, convicted of the same crime, the Black person getting more time. Like the sentencing isn't equal, isn't fair in that sense. So when we bring things like that into the conversation, then people don't really engage that part of it. They go right back to, we're going back to jail. It's like, okay, how can we stop it? Well, we also got to talk about the legal system. And then that leads to something people saying systematic issues. And then the rat race continues. And it's, you don't want this. You just want to. So it's like they won't even engage the people that are impacted by it, saying what it is. A perfect example is police brutality, police violence. There hasn't been a day in my people's history that we haven't complained about police violence. I've heard stories from my dad. I've heard stories from my grandfather. I've heard stories from my great-grandfather. He lived in Oklahoma, and he witnessed the Black Wall Street. It's where you're familiar, okay. So there's never been a time where we haven't talked about police violence. But even today, we have to justify and prove it's an issue. How can we even get past the issue or address the issue, as you're saying, to fix it if people can't come to a consensus of saying, yes, this is an issue, and it's been an issue? Then we can work forward as going forward and seeing how can we address this issue. Until Rodney King happened, it was basically a non-conversation from people who weren't Mexican or Black. It wasn't a conversation at all. And then the conversation stopped. And then Philando Castile happens. Then Austin Sterling happens. competition comes back up, just as it stops again. We're still talking about it, but people won't even realize that it's a constant issue that needs to be addressed in a sense. So I hear what you're saying as far as people being locked up and stuff, but you have to look at the issue of the court systems. Why is it that when we look at two people convicted of, let's say, robbery, how come one person got 15 years and the other person got 5 with parole? You know, because those extra 7 or something years in between, as you're saying, he's not home. He's not with his kids. So the issue's a lot deeper than that, man. So it's like people have to respect others. The thing is, people have to respect the other side and be willing to listen to the group that's it's impacting. Not saying people can't have their opinion also, but when a group has been complaining or bringing up issues for the past 100+ years, I would think they would actually have a reference point of, yo, this is going on, this is the issue, you know?
Yeah. Well, and so that's my quandary is, so when we talk about the system, my big question is how do we correct the system? Is it going to be with big, wide sweeping changes, or is it going to be done through the mechanism like what we're doing right now, where you and I are talking about this? And
Well,
yeah,
you just get me a plane ticket to Wakanda, man, and I'm out of here, man. You know, I'm just playing, you know. But honestly, I mean, to be honest with you, that's above my pay grade. But there are ways to go about it. I mean, like, I can't push legislation. I can talk about it and things of that nature, but it takes people that have power to be able to say something. Like, to be honest, one of the biggest devastations to my community was Malcolm and Martin being assassinated. We haven't had a voice or nothing like that to present issues that had our interests in mind. And for people watching, yes, I'm black. No, I don't like Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton. Sorry, I'm that guy. You know what I'm saying? And I am more Malcolm than Martin also. But there hasn't been that presentation to be able to address an issue. Like, for instance, before Malcolm died, in the Oxford debate, I think it is, he mentioned that we need to stop mentioning it as civil rights and talk about it as human rights, because progress isn't getting made here from his point of view. So we need to be able to talk on a global scale. So there was other things going on that when he left, or was murdered, I should say, the ball was dropped in a sense. But I mean, there's plenty on a local level, because no matter how much we look at political things, they're all people. It's all neighbor to neighbor, you know. So conversations like this does help, because to be honest with you, a bigot or a racist is going to listen to you more so than me if we talk to them. If I talk to him about black rights, I'm biased, and he doesn't respect me already. So if he already doesn't look at me as an equal or a man, how is he really going to take what I say seriously? Compared to, if it's sad to say, a perfect example, Lincoln Duncan. I'm not reformed. I think that's his name. When he did his speech at TG4, I think it was, to be honest with you, he hasn't said anything that wasn't new or hadn't been said by black preachers in the past 50, 60 years. Nothing. But did you notice the feedback he got? On both sides, positive and negative. And I have to step back, and I don't want to be a racialist, but why? Why is it that when he speaks, the world listens, when this conversation he's having isn't new? So my perspective is, it's 100% because he's a respected white leader. So when he speaks, people listen. I mean, and it's sad to say, I mean, but that's just the way it is. So us doing this helps a lot also, you know, because other people's voice is going to matter more. And then, not to put it all on one side, but even on my side, me talking to you, when I go talk to my neighbor, like, for instance, I have more success talking to black Hebrew Israelites probably than you would.
Sure.
I'm just saying. I mean, you'll get treated like the Covenant kids. I'm pretty sure. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There would be.
Living in New York, I've interacted with many Black Hebrew Israelites, and it's not.
So I would have more leeway or more respect off the bat with them to conversate about things.
Yeah.
So it works both ways. And people might say, well, that's race and this and that. Man, call it what you want to. I talk reality, and that's reality. So these conversations do help.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think the fear is that when I think there is a fear that there is a movement that is working that would say that Western liberal capitalism really is systemic racism, and we've got to destroy that and bring something else in. That's the real fear, among.
But
and so
what I would say is to me, that's kind of, I mentioned before, it's kind of muddying the waters in a sense. Like, I don't think no Black person is pushing for socialism. None of the social justice leaders that's talking about racial reconciliation, most of them aren't dealing with, is capitalism bad? They would talk about the aspect of wealth created and passed down since slavery. They would talk about that aspect of it, So they would talk about that. And, I mean, to be honest, that's reality. People don't want to hear it, and they want to call it socialism and things of that nature. But that's reality. Another example from the past podcast. Not sure the guest's name, but he mentioned that people now, they don't want to talk about facts. It's more so about feelings in a sense. And then in regards to this conversation, like, that's a fact. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not them saying this because their feelings are hurt or because they're in a bad spot. The fact is a perfect example. I think he was SBC. So that's why I kind of found it funny. The SBC, they became a denomination based on, I don't want to worship with Black people. Like, from the get-go, white supremacy was their foundation. I mean, there's people who owned slaves that donated, that kept them afloat during rough times. I mean, they literally got political and made sure slavery kept going and things of that nature throughout those 100 years. So how is it that I could look at that institution and say, you guys should be more involved in this reconciliation talk because you guys sure was involved in the oppression? That's not me being a socialist. That's not me being postmodern. That's reality. And I'm not saying the head of the SBC is guilty of racism, but I am saying the institution benefited from it. That's why I really appreciate, I know Al Mohler kind of got bashed a little on that episode. I really appreciate the stuff he's doing, like just putting out the SBC statement and stuff of that nature. Like, I wrote down a quote from his thing where, going back to that thing where you said, the guest said that people want to talk about feelings now and not facts. But
I think that might
is
be
that
more me than my guest.
No?
I'll plead guilty of that.
No, I'm pretty sure he said it. Like, because I literally remember looking at my phone and being like, "Is he serious? Like when has that ever really been true?" I mean, where is that? I got the quote right here. It won't take long. I wrote it down. All right, here. It's point 9 on his Southern Baptist Theology Seminary paper he wrote. And he says that white Southern apologists rewrote Southern history in order to meet the needs of the Jim Crow era. They constructed an Old South as basically a great place for both slaves and masters. That's rewriting of history. Like, you, especially from his denomination, for him or you guys to sit there and say, like, people were dealing with facts. They were dealing with facts before, but now they aren't. Well, the truth is no, that's never been the case. Like, I can't sit here and say that, that it before today, people were dealing with just in facts and not manipulating the facts and things of that nature. When I have things from his own denomination, papers, Al Mohler from research saying, no, we did partake in rewriting history. and we did do this stuff. So for me to look at that combination and say that, I can see why someone would say you guys need to be more involved in this. So, I mean, it's just crazy, man. To be honest with you, like
it's complicated because again, where my mind always wonders is, all right, what's the solution to this? How can we get to a situation where we don't see black men incarcerated at the rate they're incarcerated? How can we get the economic situation to a place where, as a percentage of the population, black men are just as employed as white men? The income disparities, this sort of thing. I mean, what's the solution to this? Really, that's the big question in my mind.
I mean, I think the solution goes back to stuff we're talking about now. Like, it takes a point of realizing the foundation of things and people working towards a solution. Like, the whole pull yourself up by bootstraps kind of isn't reality, because someone had to give you the boots. You have to have straps first to be able to pull on your bootstraps. If you've been denied boots and straps your whole life, I mean, you're telling me to pull myself up by my bootstraps, but I'm sitting here with no shoes on. Like, really? Okay, you know? I mean, I think it starts with a conversation and realizing what the issues are, and then building upon that. And then from there, being able to say, okay, yes, these things are true, and we respect that. And now let's see what issues can be done for this, in a sense. Because it has to start somewhere. It has to start with, if people can't agree on the issue, how can they talk about a solution?
Yeah, well, so here's where I'm willing to go is I agree on the issue. My solution at least includes in large part, and here's where I'm just going to be straight with you. My solution includes in very large part that black people are strong enough to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, even without the boots. This is something that so one of my favorite authors on this is Thomas Sowell, and he talks about.
Oh gosh.
Okay, so maybe we can talk about Tom Sowell, but
no, he's cool. He's cool. He's a brilliant economics.
Yeah.
In economics.
Well,
but people are quoting him for theology and racial reconciliation. I mean, that's like asking me about plumbing. I'm not a plumber, but Carrie, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but go ahead.
No, that's fine. No, but one thing that he demonstrates in his research is that when black people have been oppressed the most, they have tended to thrive and just figure these things out. And that's not to say that we can't do something with the systems in place. That's to say that.
So, question for you.
Yeah.
Catch a question real fast
Sure.
about that premise.
Yeah.
So that time span would be probably the 20s through the 60s. You'll say then, right? The time span he's talking about.
Yeah.
So back when we weren't getting equal education, we were denied access to seminaries. Back when we couldn't access the same type of resources. That's back when they had I slipped my mind, but a lot of people from Norwegian took the Homestead Act. Back when they were getting free land and other people weren't able to. That's the era he's talking about. And black people figured it out. Like, I mean, we're hard. We're strong people. Don't get me wrong. But if you really look at the era he's talking about, I mean, that's the same era people were getting lynched by dogs and hung by KKK from trees, and no one was doing nothing. That's the era that Black Wall Street happened. Now, Black Wall Street was a real thing. Successful black companies doing things. Yep. And we see what happened there. And no one got arrested pretty much. So I can't really say his theory is on point when I look at the big picture. But I understand what you're saying.
Right. Well, the point he makes is that when those obvious oppressions were occurring, we saw the legitimacy rate of black children at a much higher point. Like right now, we're looking at an illegitimacy rate of 70% across the board, 90% in urban areas. black families, those numbers are staggering and are unheard of in the history.
No, that's true. That's true. But when you say that, though, I have a good question about that stat.
Okay.
When you say that, do you presume that the father is not involved in the kid's life at all?
Well,
because there have been stats. I gave Nathan a little
statistics
also.
Would presume that, but I think that even I know what the retort to that is to say that, well, even though the couples are married, the father's still involved to some degree. But I think that the social analytics on this would demonstrate that when a man and a woman are married and committed to each other in marriage, the likelihood that the children will grow up in a healthy situation is much higher. So,
I won't disagree. I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, but like I said before, we also have to look at the why in that. I can't recall the exact policy. My dad mentions it, and I've heard some groups mention it also. People wonder why that is. And I believe it was the 60s under LBJ that there was policy saying that the government would help you more if the guy is not in the house.
Exactly. Okay, so let me...
So there's things, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so here's what I would say, is that if you want to talk about systemic racism, I would say that is found in the LBJ War on Poverty policy. That's where the systemic racism is. Because...
So what I'm saying is that's my parents. Yep. So when you're looking at that, when you're looking at that stat you just named, yep, that's the fruit of that. Yes. You see what I'm saying?
Totally agree.
So we can say that, oh, this is horrible. Yes, it is. But I can't sit here and kind of, not saying you're doing this, but I can't sit here and totally only blame black families for that. You see what I'm saying? And look at that. Yes, it's their fault also, but there's also situations that changed the culture to where it became norm, yep, in my society or in society for, oh, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So, and I keep going back and forth, LBJ.
No, I think we're both on the exact same, well, I think we're pretty close to the same page on that, in the sense that if you incentivize a woman to have children and not be married by government mandate, that if you're single and you have children, you'll receive these benefits. But if you're married, then you won't receive these benefits. You're incentivizing illegitimacy. That is what I think the systemic racism is. Ultimately.
Yeah, and not even just married. I mean, I've heard stories of people coming in looking for men's shoes in the house. Like, he really couldn't be there. You know what I'm saying? Where even if you're not married, he can't be there. He can't live there. So I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying we have to look at the full picture. You know what I'm saying? So, but when I do that, people view it as that's an excuse, or that's this, or you just want this. And it's like, no, as I mentioned before, we have to look at the facts and accept the facts. So when I talk about the church needing to get involved, especially for our conversation about the SBC, well, let's look at the facts. You guys were in depth, up to your neck, involved in benefiting and keeping this going. But once 1970 hits, you just went, oh, we're good now. You know, let's go sing We Are the World. I'll do the Michael Jackson part. You do the Stevie Wonder part. No.
Right. Well, and that's where I want to see. That's where I think the church has failed. If you want me to pinpoint that, is the church has, and that's where I have my biggest criticism, even with Lady Duncan and whoever else wants to talk about this, is they can talk about it until they're blue in the face. This is what frustrates me, is that a lot of people who talk about this issue have demonstrated very little in the way of what they're willing to do about it. You know, what are you doing to keep black families intact? What are you doing to educate young black children? What are you doing to employ formerly incarcerated black men? Talk to me about that. Don't talk to me about how, we think this system and that system and the other system should be changed. Show me what you're doing on the ground to help ameliorate this problem. Because until you start doing that, it's just a lot of talk. in my estimation. And again, I'm guilty of that. I don't know what I'm doing to try to emulate. I mean, I'm thinking about things. I'm thinking about starting a truck driving school where I can help, former convicts become truck drivers or whatever else. But I'm not really doing anything on the ground to really solve this problem. And it seems to me that the people that have the power to actually and have the resources to actually do something about that do very little. They talk about it a lot, but they actually do very little. I mean, so there's my there's my sermon. What's your thoughts on that?
All right, I agree with you, but here's a but. I'm more happy that, I guess to go back to our first conversation, I'm more glad that they're willing to talk about it and acknowledge it and build from there than I am with the people like Matt Arthur that won't even come to the table. So how can I be mad at Lincoln Duncan for acknowledging it, even though he hasn't stated that he's willing to do something, when I have people who have a bigger platform than him? Billy Graham, well, he's almost dead now, but you know what I'm saying? MacArthur, who won't even acknowledge the problem. A perfect example is, I guess it kind of brings as the social justice statement. He does speeches on MacArthur racial stuff. And he talked about being down there when Martin Luther King was shot. Okay, but how come you weren't preaching to people about it? I mean, not saying from the, change, make your whole sermon about justice for black people, but let's be honest. One can march for people or show support in many ways. So how am I going to sit here and be mad that Lincoln Duncan hasn't did anything from acknowledging it when there's people with bigger platforms not even willing to acknowledge it and talk about it? Right. I mean, a perfect example is this: when people push back on MacArthur always bringing up the story of how after MLK was shot, we drove there and I stood there on the balcony. And it was such a touching moment. And all that story, but then Phil Johnson came out to clarify that MacArthur has never changed his stance. He was not marching with those angry protesters. Wow, really? They're viewed as angry protesters? First off, should they not be angry? They've been treated as less than human since they were kidnapped and brought here. And then they try to fix it up saying, well, when I say angry protesters, he was talking about, let's say, the Malcolms, let's say. But to me, that's 100% a lie, because he was with John Perkins, one of the biggest people about social justice. He was with these guys, Charles Evers, and he was with these guys. So he's saying he practiced real brotherhood. This is Phil Johnson's quote about MacArthur. He practiced real brotherhood by not marching, not getting involved, not taking the cost of it, by just going to preach to black people. Okay, bro, that's fine, but you have to at least, if you recognize this is a problem, why aren't you saying nothing? How am I supposed to today really respect someone's opinion about social justice when I know your orthopraxy lets you ignore it in the heart of it? Your orthopraxy, you want to talk about, it's justice. Give them the gospel. Give them the gospel. Well, how come you weren't doing that then? Your orthopraxy allowed you to ignore it. And then we get to today, you're trying to lecture me about, the social justice movement is one of the biggest threats to the gospel. Wow. Where was this energy when people were getting shot with fire hoses? Not to be preaching, that's my, my sermon for the moment. But
no, that's
I can't get mad at Lincoln Duncan for acknowledging the problem and not having a way to move forward when there's people who won't even acknowledge there's a problem.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% with you on that. And that is my biggest criticism of MacArthur and Phil Johnson and all those. And I tried to bring this out with John Harris, who I had on last week. And we agree on many things. But one thing we could never really get past is exactly what you're bringing up, is the fact that, okay, if we're going to critique the other side's approach to this, then we have to at least show some good faith that we have concerns, that we're concerned about this issue, and we're not just concerned about protecting our position. We're not about protecting our, white male supremacy. That's what that stuff comes across as, and that's my biggest critique with the statement on social justice. is that comes across as we're just trying to protect our turf, and we really don't care that black men are incarcerated at these insane rates, that there's this insane gap in income, that there's this insane gap in employment, that we have these ghetto areas, that we have black children being shot by each other in Chicago. We don't care about any of that. What we really want to protect is our whatever it is we're trying to protect on this side of it. That really gets talked about, and that is wrong. And we have to come. The thing of it is, we cannot just criticize the other side, because I think the other side has plenty of things to critique. There's plenty of things to critique about Ta-Nehisi Coates, for instance. I don't think
he's not Christian though.
Right, that's right. But that's the thing.
I hear you.
We can critique that side, but we have to come up with solutions. We cannot just critique, because what that looks like, whether it's true or not, what that looks like is we as white guys are just trying to protect our turf. And you're right. We've been doing that since the inception of this country, and we've got to stop protecting our turf and start saying, okay, if Ta-Nehisi Coates isn't the solution to this, if David Platt's solution isn't the solution, if Ligon Duncan's solution isn't the solution, then what solution are we going to bring to this problem? And that never gets talked about on that side of the issue. I mean,
I agree with you.
Yeah.
So I agree with you on that. And that's actually Nathan kind of helped with this also, and also this other Lutheran guy named, he might be a pastor by now, I don't think so, Carl Trevor. There's a lot of people on my side, because I'll claim it, I'm on that side of the fence. When someone looks at me, they're going to say I'm a social justice warrior. Whatever, it is what it is. That's the reason why they've always pushed me to say something, talk, write, because I don't know why, but they think I have a good perspective on it. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the reasons why I didn't really come on. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not gonna name names, but there's people who are on the social justice side that I think are jokes, laughable. You know what I'm saying? Yep. It's like, nah, you're just a race baiter, bro. Like, come on, you know. But as far as you mentioned before about the other side, when I say the other side, I'm talking about the anti-social justice. I agree. They never get to that point. The only solution is sin and sin. Give them the gospel. Not saying the gospel doesn't have power, but that's their only answer. And that answer is never given to any other type of sin. It's never, abortion is this. Then they bring out stats. Well, majority of abortions happen by black people and this and that, and we need to do this. Let's go protest. Let's go do this. Where's that energy when I talk about black people only make up 13% of the population, but we're killed by cops at a 26%? Like, where's the energy with that? There is none. But as far as the social justice statement, as I want to say something, but I'm not going to say it. But I think something was something. Trust me, I'm not, bro.
You just got to go out there and say it.
No, but if they really wanted unity in regards to that statement, they would have brought other Christians and brothers in the faith to the table to talk about the statement before it came out. I'm not sure how much you're on Twitter, but before it was published, no one knew about it really, but before it was published, we have leaders on the other side, like Pastor Mason, Tabidi, and other people who tweeted and talked, well, basically a conversation with Tom Buck and others, saying, why don't we have an ecumenical council? Why don't we get 300 people and get together and work through this stuff? A sincere offer, just from my perspective, let's get together and let's talk. That never was led. That never got traction. And then they go to their echo chamber and come out with a statement. It's like, these are supposed to be your brothers. I mean, even if we look at the early church councils, right? Arius was at the council.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, did they delete Arius where he was and then get together and talk about, yeah, that Arius, what a heretic? No.
No. Well, that's my other critique of this whole thing is that, okay, so now listen, trust me when I tell you, because so I write for the Federalist, I do these podcasts. This is an issue that deeply concerns me, and I want to try to be part of the solution on this. And it is very, very difficult. So this is why I was so excited when you were like, yeah, I'll come on. I was like, this is going to be great. Because
Thank Nathan.
Yeah. Thank God for Nathan. Absolutely. So even my friend Kyle J. Howard, he's been willing to talk to me. But I'm telling you, it is like pulling teeth to get people to talk about this on the record from the other side.
Well, I'm blocked by Kyle, so.
Oh, are you blocked by Kyle? Kyle blocked you?
Yeah, bro. Yeah.
Kidding.
Yeah, so it's whatever. But no, I hear you.
Okay.
It's pulling in teeth, but that also goes back to the aspect of we don't feel our voices respected. See, that's my perspective.
Yeah, no.
We don't feel our voices respected.
Well, and that's not to. Sorry to interrupt you, but I think that's true. I think that people on quote my side of the issue, where I really am convinced, I just don't see any other way around this. I just say, okay, you know what? Yeah, there's racism. Yeah, there's mass incarceration. Yeah, there's income disparity. My message to a black man would be, you know what? Yes, there's all these things going on, and you can either play the victim or you can take personal responsibility. Just take personal responsibility. Just go out there and do what you got to do, bro. And if I can help you in any way, I will help you as best I can. Yes, a lot of what's going on out there is nonsense, but nobody's here to help you. They're not going to help you. You're going to have to, pull yourself up by your bootstraps with no boots. And I can, if I can do anything to help you with that, I will do it. Because I just think that a lot of the time, yeah, I mean that's the thing is, I try to encourage somebody and they like, no, I'm not talking. And so, on that side of things, on the social justice statement side of things, they just automatically assume nobody's going to talk, nobody wants to talk, and if somebody does want to talk, well, and we'll just kind of blow them off because we want to do our own thing. It's a very lazy approach.
Yeah, and to be honest, I was concerned about coming on. To be honest, after I heard majority of the last podcast, I was like, I emailed Nathan like, really, Nathan? Like, you're gonna put me okay? But I trust it. I trust Nathan. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how far I can throw him, so I can't say as far as I can throw him. But I was like, well, someone has to talk. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I was willing to come on, but I can see why people don't want to talk. You know what I'm saying? Because first thing you get is a postmodern label or neo-Marxist or, you know what I'm saying, or it's all political. Okay, like that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Even if you think it's all political, you still have to address the exact issue I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? So I just think that people do have to come and talk, but it has to be respect on both sides. Like, if no one's going to listen to what I'm saying, that's how I become more Malcolm than Martin. Put it that way. Yeah. That's the reason why I say I'm more Malcolm. I'm not going to wait for you to respect me enough to talk to me or come to your platform just to be ostracized and ridiculed and not have me looked at as a man with equal and valid points and intellect. So, to me, that's a perfect example how there's a guy, Dr. Anthony Bradley, on Twitter. Well, not on Twitter. He's a chair of a theological seminary. I mean, people sit here and on Twitter and argue with this man. Well, nothing wrong with arguing, but it discredit him like he's not an expert on his opinion. Like he hasn't wrote books on it. Like, for instance, I'm not a fan of Dr. MacArthur at all, but I can at least respect. I can at least respect saying, okay, let me hear what he's saying. You know what I'm saying? Just out of respect for what he's been, bro, you've been doing this thing for a long time. You have respect by a lot of other people. Let me hear what you're saying, and at least weigh it, and not write it off as if he doesn't know what he's talking about or anything. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and so that's the conundrum, right? So when I had my last week when I had John on, I mean, we have a lot of legitimate concerns that we agree on, and I have to admit, and maybe it's just the fact that I'm not that experienced at having these conversations out in the open, but trying to give pushback on people is especially, okay, you're my guest. I'm not going to try to humiliate you in front of whoever else. But that's the difficulty. Because again, I know enough to know that on the extreme edges of this, what people are looking for is a complete dismantle of the American project. I mean, that's a reality. I can tell you that, because I was at the Claremont School of Theology, and that was our goal. We helped people immigrate illegally, not because, of course we had some compassion for those people immigrating, but the ultimate purpose we did it for was to put strains on the system so that eventually the system would break and we could replace it with our own, which was a socialist, Marxist type of situation. That was our goal. So there are people who have that as their goal. I'm not ready to join John in saying that the Southern Baptist Convention has as their goal to destroy the American project. I'm not ready to go there yet. What I am willing to say is that the SBC is adopting certain has adopted, and they don't realize where that stuff leads. They're kind of acting out of ignorance. So there is something to be said for there is a very I don't know how large it is, but there is a who are working to undermine the American project.
So do you think that?
Yeah.
Do you think that the people who are involved in the racial reconciliation projects or that conversation are a part of that? I'm not saying that's not happening. I just think that those are two different groups that we're meshing into one. And there's two different terms of social justice. There's people who say social justice, meaning socialism, free stuff to help everybody, anti-capitalist. And then there's social justice in regards to here's a different example. When I talk about the civil rights movement, I'm talking about the 50s, the 60s onward of black people fighting for the rights of minorities to be treated as humans. You'll hear some people today say civil rights, and they're talking about LGBTQ, LMNOP. You know what I'm saying?
Right, yep.
But those are two different conversations, but they're using the same words.
Yep.
I kind of feel that's happening in a sense because, like the Claremont thing you just mentioned, how their goal was to tear down the system and the nature. I can't say that, the religious leaders on the social reconciliation platform, I'm sure you probably can name a few of them. Yeah. I don't see them pushing that. So I can't really talk about them in that conversation when I talk about to be A.R. Bernard. You know what I'm saying? I have to draw a distinction between, even though the words are the same, to me the conversation is muddled when I bring in those nut jobs. You know what I'm saying? Into the conversation I'm trying to have.
Right. No, I agree with what you're saying. See, this is the thing where I think John and I would disagree. Because while he might contend that there are some in the SBC who do have this specific agenda, that they are trying to bring in a neo-Marxist, postmodern agenda that's happening at all. I think these people genuinely care about these disparities between these groups. And the only way they see forward is to adopt what has been known as the social justice warrior milieu. They don't know how to proceed otherwise. And that's the whole problem on the other side is instead of offering them another solution to the situation, they are simply critiquing it as this neo-Marxist movement. They're lumping these two things together. Now, you're absolutely right. The thing of it is, here's the really sad thing, Tyree, is that the LGBTQ plus LMNOP, exactly like you said, that is completely usurping the the civil rights movement as it goes on today. That's what's most sad about it, is that the fact that we can't, that the debate has boiled down to, we can't tell the difference between men and women. It doesn't. The fact that black men are incarcerated at the rates that they're incarcerated at that is a discussion that's way down the priority list on the left side of the spectrum right now, and that's what's disgusting.
Right.
So you just can't get anything done from it's a frustrating situation. I'm very pessimistic about it. Yeah.
And so that's why I say that when we talk about these things, it's hard to get any traction because the people we're talking to jump to that.
Yeah.
They jump to that. Oh, that's, I mean, even when you read some of the things that I think, I don't want to keep saying John MacArthur, but his little website that came out with papers after the social justice statement, they would talk about social justice, and then it'll be a part about race, and then they'll mention something like LGBT or things of that nature. And it's like, that has nothing to do with what Christians on the other side are talking about. Nothing at all. You're fighting a ghost, like.
Well, I'm not defending MacArthur at all because again, I've had very little common ground with John MacArthur since I've known about him. I mean, other than the fact that he believes the Bible's inerrant and infallible.
Well, he's Baptist.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. And if he would have just checked out the Lutherans, we kind of figured that out a long time before they figured it out. But hey, that's okay. The one thing I would give him some ground on is it does seem like that when you kind of grant certain premises for how to approach an issue, it can fall into a slippery slope. That's happened in secular society, where the civil rights movement has been co-opted by the sexual revolution. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So the idea that a Christian cake baker refusing to bake a cake for a same-sex wedding is put on par with having a segregated lunch counter. I mean, that's where that's going. So he fears that.
Yeah, but to me, that's like saying he believes Christians can't walk and chew gum.
Well, right.
I
agree with that. I agree.
Like, come on, man. Like, give us some credit. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can oppose one and, like, I can be in favor of helping the poor and not be a socialist.
Right.
Like, I can do both. You know what I'm saying? So I get what you're saying, though.
Yeah, and that's where somebody has got to step out, and I think Al Mohler might be the perfect candidate. Okay, guys, hold on. We're not going down that slippery slope, but we cannot deny that there are problems with this. And we cannot.
I think he's trying to.
Yeah, right. So
I think he's trying.
So I'm hoping that Al Mohler.
And that's what kind of bothered me about part of the last podcast is Al Mohler deserves some credit. Like, he's actually doing research and coming out with findings about the FBC, coming out, and I know you guys were saying that him not signing the social justice statement, I think one of the statements is, can we not agree on what the gospel is? Or something like that, I think. And, like, I think that Al Mohler, he has a reason why he didn't sign it. And he stated his reason in a couple lectures about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think he was wise not to do it.
Yeah, and he stated why. And it's like, we can't write him off. I can't say he's working from ignorance. Like, I think he knows exactly what's going on, and he knows the motives behind things, and he realizes that certain things can't just be brushed aside. Like, one of his reasons for signing it, I'll give two of them. He said one of them is I'm one of the leaders of the SBC that's been completely involved in racism for years. We have been. I can't sign something when there might be an intent to diminish that racism does play a role in things and has affected things to the point the way things are now. And to me, it's like, no, I agree with you 100%. And another reason he mentioned is there are real victims in the world. And he felt that I can't, he had other reasons, but I can't say he's working from ignorance. I think that he is the perfect person, as you're saying, who can jump in a conversation, who's respected on the other side, even though I'm not seeing that respect given by some people to him. Yeah. Like, I only listen to him because I respect him. Like, bro, I'm Lutheran. Like, there's no reason why I'm not checking for Baptist podcasts. I'm sorry. I'm not. You know what I'm saying? Like, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, I will skip your podcast. I might not follow you on Twitter if you have 1689 in your bio. you know. But I respect our motor. Like, bro, just look at your station, your vocation. Okay, I'll hear what you have to say. You know? So I agree with you there that he could be the person who had the chance at bringing the conversation further.
Yeah.
All right, so there you have that, and thanks again for hanging in there with us on that. I know it might have been difficult sometimes to hear exactly what was being said, but hopefully you got the thrust of our conversation. Head on over to part 2 if you want to, and enjoy that. That's better audio, and I don't think you'll have to struggle with it as much. Thanks for listening.